She learned early how to stay intact. Not untouched, intact. Whole. Unmoved. While others reached outward, she learned to fold inward, to observe rather than lean, to remain composed even when something inside her wanted more. Control didn't feel restrictive to her. It felt like relief. Each choice she made was deliberate, carefully measured. Independence was not a posture, it was a habitat. Her life reflected that discipline. Clean lines. Predictable rhythms. The apartment smelled of fresh linens and soft coffee every morning. She made her bed meticulously, straightening corners, fluffing pillows just so. Morning light slanted through the blinds at the same angle, and she appreciated the constancy. Small rituals grounded her, the hum of the kettle, the hiss of milk frothing, the weight of a cup in her hands. Predictability was a language she understood, the world outside often was not. Work followed the same pattern. She moved through spreadsheets, emails, and schedules with calm precision. Colleagues admired her efficiency, rarely realizing it hid layers of careful self-management. She anticipated problems before they appeared and resolved conflicts subtly. Her competence was respected, her quiet authority unquestioned. Yet beneath that efficiency was an undercurrent of self-restraint, a vigilance she barely noticed anymore. Evenings were quieter than she realized. She read novels with intricate plots, losing herself briefly in worlds where outcomes were predetermined by authors' hands, unlike her own life, which was open to too many variables. Music floated softly in the background, the melody mattered more than the lyrics. She rarely called anyone, calls required unpredictability. Instead, she observed her friends' social media lives, noting their bursts of spontaneity, last-minute trips, laughter captured in images. She admired the joy in their messiness, but never envied it. Distance was comfortable. Safety lay in the margins. Meeting him was unexpected. Not because he was different, she had seen many types, but because he moved with a softness she hadn't recognized before. He was attentive, patient, but not imposing. Their first conversations drifted naturally, never forced, never urgent. She listened, shared fragments of herself cautiously. She appreciated the ease, but felt no impulse to lean in further. There was a magnetic quality to his calmness that drew her out slightly, but she recoiled before it went too far. Over weeks, she allowed small interactions to grow. Coffee on a Saturday. Walks after work. Discussions about books, music, mundane routines. Still, she held herself apart. Every laugh, every smile was partial, measured, contained. She gave enough to keep him interested, enough to remain polite, enough to satisfy her own curiosity about connection, but never fully herself. She had learned long ago that leaning too far meant surrendering parts she wasn't ready to lose. He noticed. Sometimes he asked gentle questions, tentative but sincere. "Do you feel close to anyone, or do you ever feel lonely?" She smiled politely, deflected, redirected. Answers existed, but they were careful, controlled, safe. She hadn't meant to hurt him. She hadn't meant to withhold. It simply was how she had learned to exist, detached, aware, intact. As months passed, she noticed how easy it was to maintain distance. The balance felt safe. No one crossed her boundaries because they were never truly invited in. And in that space, she thrived, her routines, her control, her quiet reflection. Yet, quietly, sometimes she wondered, did freedom feel so good because it was real, or because she had conditioned herself never to need more? Occasional moments intruded on her calm. A deeper laugh, a lingering gaze, a conversation that stretched beyond the surface. Each felt like a gentle tug at her composure. Her heart recognized warmth, but her instincts reminded her to stay intact. Attachment, she had learned, carried risk. She had seen what giving too much had cost others. Better to observe from the edge than be vulnerable in the center. Work, friends, personal projects, these became her anchor points. The world was safer when predictable, when boundaries were intact, when she could measure her energy, her emotions, her investment. She noticed the subtle erosion in others who gave too much, who leaned too heavily, who waited with hope too openly. She avoided that quietly, instinctively, without judgment. She believed it was wisdom, but occasionally she wondered if it was loneliness disguised as prudence. She began writing more deliberately. Not letters sent, not confessions shared, but private reflections. Each evening, she chronicled thoughts and observations, patterns of attachment in others, in herself, fragments of longing, moments of quiet satisfaction. Journaling became a mirror, showing what she protected, what she withheld, and what she quietly desired but never acted upon. Cycles of closeness and distance occurred with him, as with all others who ventured near. She participated enough to remain connected, but withheld enough to stay safe. Apologies, explanations, intentions repeated in a measured dance. She adapted, measuring interactions carefully. She kept her calm intact, even as small pieces of herself were stored in pauses between words, unspoken. Seasons shifted. Autumn brought reflective walks, leaves underfoot, crisp air sharpening thought. Winter clarified solitude. Cold mornings drew her inward. She observed these rhythms as if cataloging data, yet emotion intruded quietly, longing, anticipation, mild disappointment. Even in stillness, she noticed the contrast between the life she lived and the life she imagined she might want. She revisited past relationships in memory and in writing. Patterns emerged, not mistakes, not failures, but lessons. Patience can be generous, but passivity can be costly. Emotional endurance has limits. Observing without acting can teach wisdom, but it can also quietly teach regret. One evening, after another postponed plan, a quiet certainty settled. She recognized that calm wasn't fulfillment. Predictability wasn't engagement. And yet she hadn't acted, hadn't leaned in, hadn't tested boundaries in ways that risked intimacy. She realized that her independence, while a shield, had also been a barrier to presence. Morning routines regained significance. Coffee smelled of intention. The city outside seemed slower, warmer, more tangible. She started new rituals, deliberate walking, attentive cooking, focused journaling. Each choice carried ownership. She was rebuilding, slowly, deliberately, with awareness now as the guide rather than routine alone. Friendships deepened. Conversations were richer, more reciprocal. She tested honesty, authenticity, and found that sharing truth brought ease rather than vulnerability. Laughter returned, not pre-planned or measured, but spontaneous. Joy was no longer rationed. Yet, she remained cautious, giving, but always maintaining the invisible margin around herself. Reflections expanded beyond romance. She examined work, friendships, family, and discovered the power of intention. Compromise became conscious, not habitual. Choices became statements: my life is mine. My attention is mine. My presence is mine. Nostalgia appeared occasionally, memories of him, of almost moments, of paths almost taken. She observed them with clarity, not longing. Lessons were clear: awareness matters, patience is a gift, but inaction can steal time quietly. Awareness had arrived, but only after it had illuminated what she had already missed. Confidence returned, subtle and grounded. Sleep deepened. Mornings no longer began with unconscious scanning for validation. The tension that once gripped her shoulders eased. Calm returned, not as absence, but as presence. By the end of the year, she reflected quietly: life hadn't exploded or shifted dramatically. But she had. Every ordinary moment now carried new weight, every interaction held clarity, every choice was intentional. She had learned to live, fully and deliberately, without waiting for permission or validation. She didn't measure life by noise, reaction, or acknowledgement. She measured it by presence, by attention, by the quiet moments that mattered. And in that presence, she found a strength that had always existed, simply waiting to be recognized. Awareness was not weakness. Silence was not absence. Attachment, when chosen, could be a gift. And she had learned, through patience, through observation, through quiet reflection, that sometimes the truest connection is first to yourself.